you are a few days old, by now you know that we are created to solve problems. There are so many problems around us. We wake up every day, there are problems to solve in our personal lives, in our relationships, in our business. There are all kinds of problems. In the country, there are big problems today. There are problems between countries. Right now, a lot of people are also scared that there are prospects of a third world war breaking out. So there are all kinds of problems. So problems are a reality. It's a reality of life. But I think that our schools have not done well in preparing us to solve problems. Because people go through school, they come out with academic certificates, they come out with these certificates, but they're not able to solve the basic problems of their lives. Some problems are basic, just as basic as feeding yourself, as basic as self-reliance. You are 30 years old or you're 35 years old, you're still living with your older brother, or you're still living with your uncle at 35 years. At 40, you're still living with your elder sister. You are not married, you don't have a job, you're not stable. And there are many people who live in that situation. And because we were not taught problem solving by the sort of educational system that we have gone through, many of us carry problems that we should have solved in our teenage years. We carry them even into our 30s, our 40s, 50s, and even 60s. And then there's nothing so frustrating as having unresolved problems. You're carrying problems in your health, problems in your finances, problems in your relationship, problems in your business, and they are unresolved. Unresolved problems. And I think that is probably the biggest, it should be the biggest talking point in the personal development industry today. But I'm not sure we are discussing it enough. Unresolved personal problems. People are carrying unresolved personal problems. And so today I want us to look at just 3 principles that apply regardless of the problem, whether it is personal or is business or is relationship or is national or whatever it is. These ideas work 24/7. I want to encourage you upfront to solve your problems. Problems do not go away by just ignoring them. Some of us had problems with procrastination as teenagers in secondary school. We didn't resolve it, and we carried the problem of procrastination into our university days. We still didn't resolve it. Now we've carried that same problem into our work life, into our adult life, and then sometimes in our relationships. Some of us have carried unresolved financial problems, we had when we were in our 20s. Now, we were single at the time, but we had difficulties making enough income. We had difficulties budgeting. We had difficulties, making sound financial decisions in our 20s as single individuals. Today we are parents and we are still carrying the same problems. Why? Because problems don't just go away because you ignore them. Type that in the comment section, everyone. Problems do not go away by just ignoring them. And yes, God expects us to solve problems. We're expected to solve problems. And I think, if you're a school owner here, private school, or you are involved in creating curriculum for educating our children, it is so important that you create a specific subject on problem solving. And then you not only use activities in the classroom, you actually talk about it and teach skills for solving problems. So let me share some ideas about solving problems. Whatever problems you have right now in your personal life or in your business or in your relationship. I met a couple who haven't been talking to each other for years. It's as if they got married to hate each other. They hate their guts. like real hatred. And you begin to wonder, why did these people get married in the first instance? And so uh, people get married, they encounter a problem in the first year of marriage. That problem might be that they couldn't resolve healthy ways to talk with each other. So they don't talk decently, they don't talk respectfully to each other. The man speaks disrespectfully, the woman speaks disrespectfully, they use language that they shouldn't use. And then they didn't address it in the first year of marriage. It got worse in the second, got worse in the third, and then it keeps getting worse until those two people are literally at each other's throat, and until they come to a point that they're embarrassing themselves in the public, like we see on social media every day. Why? Because the problem does not go away by just ignoring them. And then the other sad thing about not solving your problems is that when you don't solve them at the time you should solve them, they keep getting bigger. Like in the case I just shared with you about a family, about a couple, who didn't resolve their communication problems. It grows, it gets worse, it doesn't get better, because a problem that you are ignoring, a problem you refuse to solve, continues to fester, like an open wound, and then until it becomes a gangrene in the relationship or in your finances. So if there's one important thing I need you to pick up from tonight's session, is that you shouldn't ignore your problems. Don't neglect them. Don't ignore them. The problems are there for you to solve. A third thing, by the way, about not solving your problems is that many times, if you don't solve a particular problem, you never go into the next level of your life. I want that to sink in. Look at it, for instance. Look at it this way. For those of you who use grade system, you don't go to grade 3 until you have passed grade 2. You don't go to grade 5 until you have passed the exams, you solve the problems of grade 4. It's exactly the same thing in life. There are people who are in their 40s, 45-year-olds, and they are still writing exams that they should have finished, that they should have passed as 10-year-old. Emotional control. You see, a 45-year-old person, a 50-year-old person, removing his shirt in the traffic and fighting another driver. Why? Because of road rage. And then the other time, a woman, someone's mother, road rage. They started fighting, made themselves naked, and people were watching them, in embarrassment. Road rage. Somebody's mother is probably in her 40s. So you see, when she didn't pass that test as a 10-year-old, you're still throwing tantrum at 45. The tantrum problem that should have been solved when you were 10 years. And this thing is exactly the same thing in our finances. If you can't pass the simple test of saving and budgeting, you can't progress to creating wealth. You can't progress to investing. You haven't solved the problem of saving. At 40 years, you don't have any saving. And that's why you don't have any investment. Because how can you talk about investment when you can't save money? When you consume everything that comes your way. And then there are many of us who are in our 50s. We still don't earn enough income. Come to think about it. There are people in their 40s who, since the time they started working, they've never come to a point that they earned enough money. They were always underpaid. The money was never enough. And you just ignore them. Then one of the things I find very curious in our part of the world is that many times we use religion to cloak it. So instead of solving the problem, we use religion. We try to use prayer. We try to use, performing religious rites, or fighting enemies in the village, who now we believe are the sources of all the problems Africans have. If the only instrument you have, if the only equipment or weapon you have is a hammer, every problem will appear like a nail. If all you have is a hammer, every problem will appear as a nail. And that is why in Africa, every problem is attributed to enemy, it's attributed to witches and wizards, because that's the only tool we have. And because we don't engage problem solving, we don't engage analytical thinking, creative thinking, everything is spiritual. And then you Africans, they will tell you, yeah, it's spiritual problem. A businessman is experiencing declining sales in his business. Customers are no longer coming. Inventory is spoiling in the warehouse, and all that. And guess where he goes? He goes to a religious figure, to imam or to a pastor or to a prophet, to find out who, like you said, who is doing him. And so they go to inquire, who is doing me? They do not sit down to think and to analyze what's the root cause of this situation. And so that's another thing about not solving your problems. You never move to the next level until you solve this problem. And then because you've been ignoring it, that's why at 40 years you're solving problems that 20-year-old people are solving. There are men in their 50s who are still solving problems in their personal character flaws that they should have taken care of as young people. Jeremiah the prophet said, it is good that the young it is good that a man bear the yoke in his youth. Many of you were living such immoral lives as teenagers, just so immoral. And then at 40 something, 50 something, you've concluded that it's not possible to be pure. And you think everybody's like that. And I read your comments. I see the things you post. And you think every man is like that. No, every man is not like that. But because you didn't conquer it as a teenager, you didn't conquer your lusts and all that as a 20-something. You didn't conquer it in your 30s. You didn't conquer it even when you got married. Now, you're 50-something. You are still pursuing little children, little girls, who are old enough, who are even younger than your last daughter. I see it all over the place. I see, office holders, politicians, and things like that pursuing little children in the university. Why? Because they didn't take care of it when they were young. Okay, so don't ignore problems. That's the key message. Whatever problem you're having right now, you need to articulate them. Don't ignore them. So exercise number one. Remember, this is a coaching session. I need you to articulate what your number one problem is right now. Okay, after this, I want you to think about it, and you can actually type it in the comment section as well. What is that number one problem standing in your way right now? What is that problem keeping you from moving forward? It could be spiritual, it could be relationship, it could be something related to your relationship, it could be financial, it could be a character issue, it could be whatever. So it could be that you're afraid, it could be that you're procrastinating, it could be that you don't have capital, it could be that you've done something that your conscience is haunting you and you need release. So you have some soul wounds, very deep soul wounds, creating depression and uncertainty and shame in your life. It could be that, whatever it is, write out your problem. Because the good news which I'm giving you is that every problem has a solution. Type it in the comment section. Every problem has a solution. Every problem you're having right now, every problem you have, every problem I have has a solution. And that's the place to begin with, because if you don't even believe that every problem has a solution, then it's going to be difficult, to move forward with that. Okay, so what is the principle number one in solving problems? So I'm going to talk about it in the way it's discussed in the literature, but I'll try, as I usually do, to bring it to a layman's language to make it something that you and I can do. Okay, so one principle, the first principle in solving problems, especially problems that have persisted for a long time, is what we call the first principles thinking. The first principles, type it, write it down. The first principles thinking. So first principles, what it does is break down a problem down to its core elements, its core truths, instead of relying on assumptions. Because the biggest problem in problem solving, in my experience, the biggest, coaching people, also trying to solve my problem. The biggest problem, in fact, the number one problem you have to overcome before you can solve any problem is the problem of assumptions. False assumptions. Because if you make a false premise, if you're trying to understand the problem and then you start by making a false premise, everything else you are going to prefer will be wrong. Everything else you can think about will be wrong. If the premise of which you're solving the problem is wrong, everything else is going to be wrong. And I'm really struggling hard to think about a solution, to think about illustrations. There's one which I don't think that the algorithm will like. But let me say it in such a way that the algorithm can pass it and then you understand me. I won't use a graphic language, but this young man, true story, was told, and in fact, it happens all the time. I thought it was only a case. It happens all the time. So this young man was told by a prophet. I won't mention the name of the city where he was. He was doing petty trading for years and nothing was working. And then his prophet told him that his mother was responsible for his failure. So now that's a false premise. That's an assumption. And because the young man had assumption, it's like, how can my own mother be responsible for all my suffering? How can my own mother not allow me to go forward in life? So you see, that premise determined the way he was thinking, and it ultimately determined the action that he took. Because that young man left the city, went straight to his village, went straight to the kitchen, picked, and then you can whatever, and that was it, his mother. So I don't want to complete it, but I'm sure your mind can help you complete what happened. It was horrible. It was horrible. So false assumptions are the biggest challenge to solving problems, because once you get the assumption wrong and you get the premise wrong, you can't solve it. Therefore, that's what makes first principles very, very powerful. That's what makes first principles very powerful, because it now breaks down a problem to its core truth instead of relying on assumption. I'm thinking about an example like in a business situation, because I work with businesses. Or even in my own experience. So, someone can say, for instance, marketing is too expensive. But instead of saying marketing is too expensive, as a business owner, or you have a side hustle, you can say, what are the fundamental elements of marketing? You break them down. And when you break down the fundamental elements of marketing, for instance, there are 3 specific pillars of marketing. The first pillar is customer segment. There must be a person you're targeting. But see, I can actually use this marketing example to illustrate the first principles. There are 3 pillars in marketing. A lot of what people call marketing is not marketing. They're not doing marketing. The first pillar is this: there must be a customer segment. There's a target audience. In recent times, I've been producing organic fufu, organic palm oil, traditional handmade palm oil, and also sourcing wild honey. It's not for everybody. So I made a post, which many of you saw, talking about my honey and then the journey to make this honey, to find this specific hunter, how it took months, because I started that search in November and I didn't find a trusted hunter. November, December, January, February, it was toward the middle of February that I found this gentleman. Okay, and then I knew that not everybody could buy that, and sure enough, when I posted it there, so some of you saw all the hundreds of comments and then dozens of them. Oh, it's too much, it's too whatever, it's too much. How can you be selling a bottle of honey, that much? And that's a key. That's a key fundamental in marketing. You cannot sell to everybody. And when I was putting it there, I know that it's not going to be for everybody, because there are people like that who go, oh, honey is 1,500. How can you all be 18,500? But because it is fundamental in marketing to focus, not to be distracted by those people, but to focus on the people I'm trying to serve. The orders are coming in. There are more orders than I can fulfill. So the fundamental of marketing, number one, is a customer segment that you are focusing on, not on the other noisy people. And you don't let those other noisy people take you off your focus in marketing. The second element of marketing is value proposition. For that target audience, there must be at least one core value proposition. It's a problem you're solving for them. So for my audience, for instance, these are very busy people. They live in town. Some of them live abroad. They don't have the time to go looking for hunter, to go sourcing, authentic honey, which is one of the most difficult things to buy in the world. I understand that Food and Agriculture FAO of United Nations, they say that honey is the third most adulterated food in the entire planet. Extremely difficult to find good. So you might find 100 bottles of brands of honey in a supermarket, and then out of the 100, maybe just 2 actually are honey. So it's very difficult. So the market, the people I'm targeting, the value proposition is, look, you guys, I have the adventure and the passion. I have the truck, I have the people, and I stay, very close to the village. I can go to these people. You can't leave your work, because I work for myself. So I can wake up at 2 a.m. and drive and say, let me go and meet this hunter in the forest. You can't. From that your big office in Ikoyi and Victoria Island or Accra or wherever you're watching me from. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go for you. I want to make sure that they don't use insecticide. I want to make sure that they don't use any chemicals in harvesting it. And then I want to make sure that this is real honey. That's the value proposition. So what I'm selling is not honey. What I'm selling is authenticity. What I'm selling is convenience for those people who can't go to the forest, who don't have the time and the money to go and do this research, to go do all this running around and doing. So there must be value proposition to these particular people. Forget other people, though. Focus on them. And then the third element is geography. Where do you find these people? So that's the first principles of marketing. So instead of saying marketing is expensive, no, you break it down. What are the core elements of marketing? What are the core elements of marketing? Okay, and then using that, you can now make very good decisions. You can solve the problem better using first principles. It's the same thing. You use first principles when it comes to health or to anything it comes to. You ask yourself, if there's a health problem, maybe there is maybe in your family, so I'm talking about with your children and also with you, and your spouse, your husband or your wife. It's like you guys are always having stomach issues, stomach problems. Stomach is always biting, or there's one stomach issue or the other. Break it down to its principles. Now the stomach just doesn't start hurting. It's got its, so there must be something that the stomach does not like that mama is cooking or putting in the food. Maybe a particular spice, maybe there's some kind of allergy, but there must be something fundamentally that the stomach does not like that you're putting in the stomach. And so every week, one person in the house is going to the hospital. So whatever it is, break down things to its first principles, and then you find that once you break down things in first principles, you can now start picking them apart, like in the case of marketing that we talked about. So I can say, all right, could it be that I'm targeting the wrong audience? Could it be that I'm targeting people who don't have money? Because the two primary requirements in marketing, in targeting, is that your audience must have the willingness and the ability to pay. So there are people who are willing, they want to attend my Financial Fitness Challenge program. By the way, the next one is coming up in May. We are enrolling now. Don't say I didn't tell you. We are enrolling now, and you're paying early bird registration right now, because very soon the early bird registration will be gone, and then you have to pay the full thing. Yeah, there are thousands of you who come to my DM. Oh, I want to, but I don't have the money. So there are people like that, and why you love them and then you serve them in other ways, but they're not the people you're looking for, and you can't waste time. There are other people who have the ability to pay, but they're not willing. There are people who can pay, but it's like, why do I need to pay to attend this man's mentorship program? Why should I pay? I can use that money and you know, go to an expensive restaurant and then use it and eat. Take my girlfriend out and then we eat. There are people who think like that. Those ones too are no use. They are no use to you. So you don't focus on people who can pay, but they are not willing to. And you don't focus on people who are willing to, but they can't pay. You're looking for people who are willing and who are also able to pay. That intersection, that's what you're looking for. So it could be that that's the problem in your business. So you take that core element and you work on it. It could also be, by the time you break it down to its core truths, it could be that the place you need to find your answer, your solution to solve the problem, it could be that it's in the value proposition. Maybe the value that your business is giving is not very clear, it's not very clearly communicated and all that. So that's a very good thing about first principles. Okay, second principle, this works every time, no matter your business, no matter your gender, no matter your race, no matter your beliefs, it works all the time. The 80-20 rule. Okay, so that's what many of you know as the Pareto principle, and of course, you know, our grandfathers used it long before Uncle Pareto put it out as a principle. Okay, so the 80-20 rule basically says focus on what truly moves the needle. It says that 80% of results come from 20% of efforts, and you can apply it in so many things. 80% of your income come from 20% of your income streams, or 20% of your income effort. So it's really a very powerful idea in problem solving. It works regardless of what your business is, regardless of what you believe, regardless of what your religion, regardless of your race. It works. It works for everybody. It works for the young. It works for the old. So instead of trying to fix every problem, focus on the smallest key changes that can bring the biggest impact. So you might have lots of health issues, and there's so many things, you know, you can do. You can go to the hospital, you can sleep there, you can, you know, do surgery, you can, you know, take 32 medications at a time. There are people who take up to 16 to 20 medications at a time every day, I have seen. So instead of that, you can just ask yourself, what is that one thing that if I change it, that little 20%, if I actually focus and change it and I become consistent about that, it can improve my health significantly. So, and it might be something as simple as taking a walk just 3 times in the week. Just start taking a walk. In the place that we live, I have seen people being transformed from taking a walk. In fact, there was one man who was diagnosed of diabetes. I think he had high blood pressure, he had diabetes and things like that. This guy, every morning, he would walk, take a walk, brisk walk, so he did this, and he said in 2 years, less than 2 years, he reversed it completely. It went. And then, you know, when he walks, you know, I'm walking with him, and, you know, I try to catch up with him. The guy was very, very fast and very brisk, very healthy. So just a small effort that creates some big results. So you have to think about the Pareto. What are the little things that you can do consistently to drive success? And then in your case, it might just be something in your finances, something as small as saying, okay, every month, I'm going to save $10, $20, and I'm going to put it in the stock market, or I'm going to put it in the mutual fund. It's a small effort. But guys, what that thing will translate, that $10 every month, what it will translate in another 10 years will shock you and shock the world. That's how Pareto works. So whatever problem it is you're having right now, if it is in your relationship, like in your marriage, what are these small things, you know, the small things? Like just telling yourselves, I love you, just saying that word. It's small. It doesn't cost money. Just waking up every day, like every day I wake up. First thing is hug my precious wife. It doesn't cost money. It doesn't cost anything. And the thing is even enjoyable. But the warmth of that hug stays with me throughout the day where I'm going. Simple things buying gifts, saying thank you, saying I love you. It can break that ice. You've not been talking to each other well for 5 years, and there are people like that. One woman said, was telling me many years ago that she and her husband have never been in the same bedroom for 5 years. She said so, for 5 years. But then you see them in church in those days, they will singing fantastic, other people will be looking at them and all that. Find that simple thing that you need to do to change the situation, because many times what drives the biggest results is not that big thing, it's that very simple thing. So that's one principle. And then the final principle I want to share today in our conversation today is the power of adaptability. And then you've got to give me a second because my battery is about to die. So just a second, let me plug it in. Okay, and then while you're waiting, tell me, what's your aha moment? What's your aha moment? What are you leaving tonight's session with? Type it in the comment section. Let me know what's your aha moment so far. All right, so everybody do that. Take some time and do that. Let me look at your comments. Okay, yeah, Friday had captured that every problem has a solution. Very good. And then now Zambia says first principles. Okay, Faith for 5 is watching from New York. Amazing, thank you. Njideka, yes, good evening. All right, what's your aha moment? Okay, Helen actually said, don't neglect your problems. And she said, problems do not just go away. I guess you wanted to say by ignoring them. Very important. And then I have, hello from Somaliland. I'm so glad you joined us, from beautiful Somaliland. Okay. Good. What are your aha moments? Type in the comment section. Let me know. What is one thing that you are leaving tonight's session with to teach others and also to apply? So while you type that, I will talk about the power of adaptability. Okay, some people call it Darwin's law in business, especially in your business. It's not the strongest or smartest to survive, but the most adaptable. So whether this is a personal problem or it's a business problem or it's a relationship problem, it does not matter. But there are many times that adaptability really, really matters. I remember in the thick of my challenges, after I quit Shell and then lost all our savings and things were not working well, I remember I went to the television station. So I was on TV for a period of 5 years, 2009 to 2014, for 5 years, every week. And somehow I loved it because I was bringing value to millions of people. People were watching from different parts of Africa because it was on cable. So I used to get calls, from South Sudan. I got calls from Ghana. I got calls from Angola and different places, and people really, really loved it. Some of you here, maybe you were too young at the time, or you may have watched it. So I had this program, this live coaching on television, like what we are doing today, that was called Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise. And then I had imagined that because I was bringing so much value, to the world, that if I wrote books or if I called people to come for seminars, that many people would come and that I would make lots of money. But that wasn't the case. So even though millions of people listen to me every week, each time I called for a seminar, I advertised a paid workshop, paid event, people did not come. So sometimes 3 people, 5 people, 6 people will register, and then in one particular case, only one person. So it was not working. So I had to adapt. So I had to understand that, unfortunately, and it's still so today, this market, the African market, unfortunately, is not a knowledge loving market. And so If it is in the US, what I would do, I would be a multi-millionaire today, just coaching, and then the millions of people that I have touched over the years, and I touch every month. So sometimes in one month I have 3 million, 5 million, 6 million people who read my post across the different channels. Sometimes, like, you go to on TikTok, I have some videos I put there that have had close to 800,000 views of people who watched it, and that's even apart from people who shared it. But it was not making money, it was not paying my bills. So I had to adapt. I had to start asking questions. What else can I do? What is the reality today? Okay, and then how can I adapt? And see, that question has led me into a number of things that I am doing today. Okay, so every successful business, whether you're talking about Amazon, Apple, or even entire empires, they thrived by adapting to new environment. And I know many of us are having different challenges today because the environment, our world keeps changing. Our world keeps changing. Right now, in fact, the world changed since after the pandemic in 2020, changed very, very seriously. Many people who were born, children who were born after 2020, don't even know what the world was like before then. Because mommy is at home, they are all at home, and she's working from home. She sees mommy on her. But it wasn't like that before. Before 2020, everybody went to work. Now we have what we call work from home. And now we've taken it for granted that that's the way. But it was, the culture of the world was totally changed from what it was used to be. And so if you can't adapt, you are going to struggle. And this is also why today technology has taken over so much space. The financial markets are becoming huge. And so if you cannot adapt, you find yourself dancing reggae when the music is hip hop. I'm just making that up. So you find yourself no longer relevant in the world that we have today. All right, so let's read your aha moments, and then we will summarize. Okay, Chinyere says, I will start taking simple steps to improve my communication relationship with my ex-husband since we share 4 kids together. Excellent, very good. Improve communication, very good. Yeah, type your aha moments, everyone. So now, in summary, today we were looking at problem solving strategies that work all the time, irrespective of race, of belief, of whatever. And we have seen that problems are a fact of life. We do have problems. And then secondly, we should not ignore our problems, because when we ignore them, they don't go away just because we ignore them. Our problems don't go away because we ignore them. So problems are there for us to solve them. And when we don't solve our problems, they become worse. They actually fester, they become worse. So one day, as a married couple, you don't talk to each other. This one sleeps facing east and the other one sleeps facing west. If you don't deal with it, and it enters the second day, enters the third day, enters the second week, enters the second month, it gets worse and much more difficult. Therefore, it's important to face a problem. We've also seen that we don't move forward in our lives until we have solved a problem at a particular level, because you can't go to grade 6 until you pass grade 5. It's the same way. And then we looked at 3 core principles, strategies for solving problems. We looked at first principles, where you break down the problem into its core truths, into its fundamental principles and truths. So I use the example of marketing to solve business problems. So you break them down, and then you can see where you can adjust. We also talked about Pareto principle, where you focus on the small part and the small effort that drives big results. And then we also talked about what was the third one? We talked about, that was Pareto. Okay. So we talked about the first principles, we talked about the Pareto principles, and then we talked about the adaptability. Okay, all right. So go out there, face your problems. The more you solve your problems, the bigger muscles you develop, mental muscles, intellectual muscles, spiritual muscles that allow you to solve bigger problems. And the more you solve your problems, the bigger you grow. And keep showing up, because you have no idea what's coming your way next. I'll see you exactly same time tomorrow.